Hey everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. I'd like to talk about a little case study this week, something that I remember hearing a lot about early in my safety career, but it came up and Melinda presented this as a great topic for What's Up Wednesday. So let's dive into it. And I think the case study or the question starts with, have you ever noticed that UPS specifically, but many delivery companies, FedEx, DHL, et cetera, that they almost entirely make right turns? You just don't see them making left turns. Why is that? Now, early in my career, I was told that one of those companies had a policy that their drivers were not to make right turns. Now, I can't confirm or deny that that is true, but I can speak specifically to the United Parcel Service, UPS, and what their policy is. So what they discovered over time with a lot of experience is that by using a routing approach that's designed to avoid turning into oncoming traffic, left-hand turns, UPS was able to reduce the chance or risk of accidents. Therefore, about 90% of turns made by UPS drivers globally are right turns. So how do they do that? Let's talk a little bit about that. You think, okay, here's an example of a safety policy put in place, but when we look at some further information around this decision, it's a really good example of or demonstrates how safety and production can work hand in hand to improve efficiency. So when we look at their right turn routing strategy, it's been kind of widely reported that they save about 10 million gallons of fuel every single year. They reduce our CO2 emissions by about 20,000 tons currently. They deliver roughly 350,000 more packages in a year by making right turns. They reduce the fleet of vehicles by about 1,100 trucks, and they cut the total distance driven across their fleet by about 28.5 million miles per year by taking right turns only. Really, really interesting. So how do they do that? Well, today is probably it's easier to do than it was when it was more manual planning and manual routing of delivery routes. Now they have a system that is called Orion, and that system actually routes their deliveries to allow them or enable them to take almost entirely right turns. And it's expected that at some point at full capacity that Orion is going to save roughly 300 to 400 million dollars a year in cost. It's going to reduce fuel use by that 10 million gallons per year that I mentioned, and it's going to cut CO2 production by up to 100,000 metric tons a year. Pretty substantial numbers when you look at it. Now, statistics say that roughly a quarter of traffic fatalities and about a half of all traffic injuries are attributed to accidents at intersections. And we've already kind of discussed that left-hand turns across oncoming traffic are the most dangerous event that occur at an intersection. So when we think about that, some of the statistics say that in crashes where there was a left-hand turn involved, that occurred about 22.5% ish, 22% of all crashes resulted in a left-hand turn. Whereas when somebody was turning right, they found that that incident rate was only about 1.2%. So fairly significant number, 22% versus 1.2%. A significant difference between the two. So when we kind of think about that UPS right turn concept, it's not really about never turning left. It's really about reducing exposure and improving efficiency by always turning right or turning right as much as you possibly can. And as we kind of know in safety, the best solutions aren't always the most dramatic solutions. Sometimes they're small, sometimes they're repeated decisions that can remove friction, reduce exposure, make the safer choice easier. Whether you're looking at route planning, JHAs, material staging, traffic control, equipment placement, efficiency, and safety often improve together when we slow down long enough to plan. And I know I've preached this concept of planning is the key to success, And a lack of planning is the key to failure. So in this particular case study, UPS proved that the shortest route is not always the safest or most efficient. And sometimes the best path forward starts with reducing unnecessary risk, one decision at a time. And in this case, UPS made that decision, and it has benefited them in unbelievable ways that they probably didn't think would occur until they actually implemented this policy. So think about how significant a really small change can be. And for those who had never heard this story or knew why you see delivery trucks almost always turning right, well, now you know. Hopefully that's helpful. We'll see you next Wednesday.